And when the overdrive is combined with the fast Leslie, you get some really good solo punch. So basically, let's go from like a normal volume without Leslie. Hit the Leslie, go to overdrive. Welcome to another 12-Tone Warrior video. I believe this is the number 6 installment, and for this video, we are going to be doing preparing your rig. So this whole video here will concentrate strictly on getting, if your rig is new to you, then getting to know it, getting it all prepped up for gigs, especially perhaps your first gig if you're just getting into this. So I thought we'd do this in true form and start in a completely stripped down fashion, which means we're going to set the rig up from scratch, just like we've arrived at a gig. And right behind me, you'll see all of the stuff. Let me get out of the way a little here. We're going to be setting all of this up right here. And we'll do it, we'll do a little fast camera motion so I don't bore you, and maybe I'll put a little music on in the background. But that's what we'll do. We'll get this all set up, and then we're going to be working on getting, if this is good, if you're just starting out with this and you don't have your sounds in a row, I'll be showing you how to prepare a rig for that. Doing something as simple as getting your volume levels all set in the beginning and how you would go about changing those during a gig. Basically, how to get through, how to get yourself started up, get comfortable with the gear you have, and get ready to gig. So let's get started. We will get this rig set up. Okay, so I got my keyboards fired up and we are ready to play. However, I want to show you around the board a little to let you know that, before you actually start playing a gig, there's certain settings and things you want to make sure are right, as well as if these are new boards to you and you've never placed your sounds where you need them, you're going to need to do that too. So we're not yet ready to actually get in and play a gig yet. We're going through some preliminary steps to get yourself set up as a classic rock keyboardist. And we're going to start with the simplest of things, such as getting your volume levels set properly. So what I'll do at this point is I'll walk you around with my iPhone camera and show you a few things on the boards. And this is not going to be brand specific, so this can apply. These are going to be general things at first that they apply to any keyboard you would use on stage. Okay, so here we are. We're set up for the gig. Now, of course, before we even get to this stage, if this is your first gig and you have your set list just like you would at any gig, here's the one we'll be sort of working off of. You're going to already want to have all the sounds that you're going to be using set up in such a way that you have instant button access to all the sounds you need for the gig. And of course, your keyboards aren't going to come that way from the factory. So what you need to do, now I'm pretty old school when it comes to this, so I'm used to, from back in the 80s and 90s, before they came up with these banks on these keyboards called favorites, that lets you select any sound from any bank anywhere in the keyboard and sort of copy it or mirror it to your favorites category. In the old days, we just had to create our own user bank. What these keyboards do is they give you a user bank to overwrite the sounds that they have in those areas with your own sounds. So, for instance, on this Yamaha Mox 8, the keyboard manufacturers give you a row of banks and parts. Basically, a bank of sounds where you have like 16 sounds to a bank available at an instant button press. So the Mox 8, the Yamaha way of storing the presets works pretty easily for me in that I can get 16 of the sounds I need for this board all available at one button press, just like that. So here's my acoustic piano sound. And then I just instantly on one button push go to Rhodes, to Wurlitzer, to clavinet. So all of these sounds, no matter where I am in the set list, because set list often changes during the course of a night. You don't know where you're going to be. You need to know where those sounds are on your board. Now on my Kurzweil, they store sounds in a different way. They also still have banks of sounds, but they don't have these rows of knobs here. Instead, they give you these keypads. And I find that on the Kurzweil, for some reason, I just go for this jog wheel up here and I twist it left or right to get the sounds I want, which I can also do down here. I have a jog wheel on the Yamaha, but it's not as instantly grabby, if you know what I mean. It's kind of small, and I just prefer these rows of buttons here. Up here, I just go for this, but the whole point of this isn't really the way I do it. It's more like you know where your sounds are on your boards. And that's going to require prep that goes beyond setting up for the gig like I just did here. Your boards already have to you already have to take your new boards, if they're new to you, find the sound you want, like acoustic piano. What I would normally do is I would copy that into my user bank as my number one sound for that user bank. And then I go in and I edit those sounds to get maybe some of the factory reverb off a little, because sometimes they just drench these sounds in reverb. And I boost the volume setting for that patch or sound. So for instance, if the acoustic piano is set at 100 factory wise, I boost that up to like 115 or something. I get it closer to the max volume of 127 without distorting. And that way all my sounds come out hotter out of the board than they would on if I was just using the factory sounds. So this is something I prefer to do, not just to get my sounds in a row, but also I go in and edit those sounds as well to get them to my taste, to the volume. And usually that just means the volume level. But I mean, I will go in and do other kinds of edits as needed, like editing the envelopes to get a softer attack, which I showed you in that Toto example, Africa, in one of my episodes. So once all that work is done, now you know where your sounds are on your board, so that anywhere you are in your set list, if this set list changes and the band leader says, oops, we're going to skip Shakedown Street by the Grateful Dead and we're going right into You May Be Right by Billy Joel, you have to be prepared for that. And doing a pre-programmed, what these boards will allow you to do, and sometimes you can even do it, program it so that at a foot switch, all of your sounds change for the next song. That's all possible, but I think it's more of a hassle than it's worth it for the average classic rock gig. It just doesn't call, classic rock doesn't call for a library of that many sounds. When I was doing a prog rock gig, for instance, we were doing songs like Yes, Heart of the Sunrise. That was quickly followed up by UK in the Dead of Night, and then Gentle Giants Playing the Game. I had 3 boards, and for that I had to get a MIDI unit that allowed me to, at a foot switch, send a MIDI signal to all of my boards to switch sounds instantly in that set. So for something like that, yes, I would say getting your entire set pre-programmed might be a thing you have to do. But for classic rock gigs, it just isn't really a thing you need to do. You're better off just knowing where your sounds are and how to get to them quickly at any given moment, and then you're basically good to go. So before you even play your first note at the gig, a general rule is that you want your volume, your master volume settings for both boards to be set at 9 instead of the max volume of 10. And what this does is this lets you get the max volume level for comping that you can get without without getting too loud to where you're in your solo volume territory. So basically, whenever it's time for you to burst out with a solo, you would go to your volume setting, which is at 9, and boost that up to 10 and take your solo. So for instance, this comping level here on the piano, I'm going to boost that. And now back to regular. So that lets you do what, the guitarist does when it's time for you to take a solo. You got to burst out with your volume, and then you bring it back down when you're done. Same thing with your upper board, but there is an exception that I have for the organ. For organ, rather than just boosting the volume, I go for this mod wheel, and with this doing the mod wheel on the organ, the way it's programmed in the Kurzweil, puts it into overdrive mode. So this is what the organ normally sounds like, and then that's overdrive. Normal, overdrive. So, and when the overdrive is combined with the fast Leslie, you get some really good solo punch. So basically, let's go from like a normal volume without Leslie. Hit the Leslie, go to overdrive. back to normal. So these are changes you're expected to be able to do during the course of a gig. Increase your volume for solos, bring it back down when you're done soloing. And what this does is this puts you, and of course the rest of the band, in control of your dynamics. Each member of the band needs to be in control of their own dynamics so that you're not relying on a extra member of the band to run the soundboard that you would also have to pay. That would be like someone running the soundboard during your gig. That's sort of almost like a performance thing. Whereas when you set the board and forget it, you need to have all of your dynamics things that you're going to do during the course of a gig that needs to be built in to what you're doing. So always being in control of your dynamics, extremely important. So many songs from the set list really just require, for instance, let me go through this. And so first song on the set is Allman Brothers Band, Melissa. So that just really requires piano. Lots of songs. Here's Eyes of the World by the Grateful Dead. That'll be acoustic piano down here with a little organ up here in later verses or in a later chorus. And so on. And then, so really most of these songs on this list really just require acoustic piano down here and organ up here. And that's really most of it. But that's not all of it. So for instance, the first song on here that I noticed a significant change would be Margaritaville by Jimmy Buffett. And so for that, I go from my acoustic piano to my Rhodes sound for the lower board. And I go from my organ to I do a two-hand steel drum sound here to get a tropical sound. But that could be a marimba or something like that, a balafone, anything that gives you that tropical flavor that you're looking for. So for some songs that you're going to do, you may need more than one kind of organ sound. Now, what you can always do is just change your drawbars up here. But for me, I have like a favorite organ setting, which is 88880005. That's like my default organ setting for most of my organ work. But I also have, I also want to get a higher drawbar sound. I want to be able to go from my standard sound, which would be something like this, to something like this. Something cheesy with the drawbars pulled way up and the Leslie spinning fast. And so I'll save that sound as its own preset so I don't have to go, once that sound, like on a Doors song, is called for, I just call it right up instead of having to change the drawbars and the percussion setting and the Leslie setting. Everything's all preset and ready to go. You're going to find yourself on some songs where you have to change settings in the middle of a song. And this is a little more difficult than just set it and forget it for the song. And one example I'll give for that, which is a perfect example for our band, Sheep Dip, when we do this, is You Can't Always Get What You Want by the Rolling Stones. This is requiring me to have 4 different sounds for that whole song: piano, organ, choir, and the French horn. And that French horn, of course, only pops up real early in the beginning of the song, but it's there. And so, of course, I let you all know during earlier episodes that I notoriously hate splits. I do them when necessary, but if I can avoid doing splits, I avoid it. So for You Can't Always Get What You Want, I have the whole bottom board, piano only, and it's on my upper board that I set 4 sounds in a row that I then have to switch. So, for instance, I start out with an organ sound. We basically begin the song like it is in the movie The Big Chill. I do this organ part. Right, and so on. As soon as I'm done with that, I get up here and I switch immediately to the French horn. Right, that once that part's over, I go up another step and back, which is I pre-program myself to go back to the organ, so I'm back to this for the majority of the song. And when that chorus comes along, so that way I have one hand up there on the organ, the other down here on the piano. I'm playing it all at once. And then the bridge, which kind of goes like this. So basically you have a bunch of switching around to do there to get to that chorus part. Rather than do this in splits on my keyboard, I prefer to make a live patch change there. And again, I showed you an example of this on in one of my earlier episodes, episode 3, where I make a patch change for the song Africa by Toto. So, like, basically I would say once or twice in your entire set are you going to find yourself having to kind of execute something a little tricky like that. Most of what you're going to be doing is set your sound for the whole song. And you may find yourself in your set list that, 3 or 4 songs in a row just have piano here, organ there. You don't really have that much to worry about. The key thing I'm trying to get across in all of this, even though I'm doing it in a rather chaotic manner, is to get, the key thing being, get comfortable with the equipment you have or the equipment you plan to use for your gigs. Know where your sounds are, how to get to them quickly, be nimble when it comes to changing those sounds quickly. Always be comfortable with mid-song sound changes. Sometimes those can be a little tricky and throw you off. So you want to practice those often at home, not just when it's time to practice with the band. So overall, just really be comfortable with your keyboard setup. It's yours. You own it. You manage it the way you most feel comfortable with. Use the sounds that sound best to your ears. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this installment of 12 Tone Warrior. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to be reminded of future episodes, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode.